So we talk about interests. What are you really trying to achieve? What are you really trying to get done? I always think about a guy who walks into a hardware store and asks for a 1/4-inch drill bit. You know, what does he want? Well, he wants 1/4-inch holes, and he figured out how to get them is the best way is a 1/4-inch drill bit. But I guarantee if you had a box of holes back behind the counter, he'd buy them because that's all he really wants.
He wants it done.
You know, that's all he really wants is a bunch of holes.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Context to Contracts podcast. I am Bryan Lovell, always here with the amazing John Jones, and today we have Mr. Steve Richmond and a very special guest hailing from Maryland, Mr. Jeff Cochran. Steve, why don't you tell us who we got here today?
We got the best. Bottom line, we got the best. We got Jeff Cochran. Jeff and I met probably about 2000, 2001. We were working for a place called the Shapiro Negotiations Institute. Guy named Ron Shapiro wrote a book, got it right here, called The Power of Nice. Ron says, hey, I need two of the best people to go out there and share the power of nice throughout the United States. Actually, it ended up being the world eventually. And Jeff and I were on stage together talking about, and I'll let Jeff tell what the tagline to The Power of Nice is. But he and I were out there on the road together many, many miles, and he's smart. He's a great communicator. He's a negotiation specialist. He's a really good person. And now he's a partner in the Shapiro Negotiations Institute. And he's written a book or co-authored. He goes, I co-authored. He's going to reach up and pull that one up in front of him.
There we
Persuade.
go. Persuade.
I'm hoping I can persuade him to send one of those books to me. We'll have to see how that works out.
He accused you earlier, Steve, of even reading the book that apparently you were pitching all over the country.
But what's really pretty funny is, and it's bent right here, because when I picked this one up off the shelf, and you can see, it was tucked in, so it had it right there. So I knew what page I was on. Anyway, so this is Jeff from Baltimore, Maryland. Jeff, how you doing? Great to see you again.
I'm doing great, Steve. Thank you all for having me. You know, this is I love talking about negotiations, deals, persuasion. I've spent 21 years in the industry, traveling all over, talking to folks about how they can negotiate and persuade and influence better. And, you know, it's been well received all over the world. The funny thing is, my house is a shambles. I can't get my kids to do anything. My wife laughs at me. You know, she often says,
Sounds about right.
You know, it's a good thing. It's a good thing you like talking about this stuff because you're horrible at it. And part of the reason, I know, and part of the reason I'm horrible is because no matter how much knowledge you have, you got to implement it. You know, so I'm one of those people who likes to be loved. You know, so my hobby is I have a little hobby farm that I run with my wife, and people show up and they go, would you take $100? And I'll say, that seems a little high. Look, I don't want you to be, you know, I'll take 90 and let's just have you walk away feeling good, which is counter to everything in the book. So, you know. It's implementation that's key.
Now you know why I'm such good friends with Jeff, and we've maintained that relationship over time because he always makes me feel good about myself. Now,
yeah. Well, that's your gift too, Steve.
So
you're a giver.
We got The Power of Nice, and that's a negotiations book, right?
Yes.
What's the tagline on that? You know that. I'm throwing
The Power of Nice. The best way to get what you want is to help them get what they want. Now,
win-win.
That doesn't mean you just give it away. But if you can figure out how to give them something that costs you very little, but has a tremendous value to the other side, that's a win-win negotiation. And even though it's a great, overused expression and cliche, it's what we're all shooting for.
And then you flip that. Did that for a while, and now the second logical expression of that's this book, Persuade, right? I mean, we say, okay, So sometimes it might not feel like a negotiation, but you're still trying to figure out how to get what you want. I'm guessing that's how the persuade.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think of persuade as like the power of nice's little brother. Persuasion is negotiation's little weaker brother. Negotiation is I have something and you need it. So, let's get together. Let's figure out. Persuasion is more, you know what? I'm not sure that I have anything for you, but I need you to take certain actions. So how do I get you to do that? So, we started looking around for a model for persuasion. Our model for negotiation is the 3 Ps: prepare, probe, propose. Preparation, find out as much as you can, find the comparables. Probe, ask the questions, find out what it is that they really want, not what they just what they say they want. And then finally make a proposal that's a logical culmination of those first 2. Well, when we moved over to persuade, we started looking for a model. Did we have to create a model or did one already exist? Well, fortunately, in some of our studies, we stumbled onto Aristotle's model for persuasion. Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher and teacher. So, we took that model, and his model was, look, you cannot persuade anyone unless you've developed your own personal credibility.
Okay.
Or borrowed the credibility from an expert.
Somebody else, yeah.
So the first building block is build credibility. Then he talked about, people make decisions emotionally.
100%.
So you have to engage their emotions. The third step is after you've built your credibility, after you've engaged their emotion, it's only then that you can introduce your logic. Because people don't care about your logic unless they believe you, trust you, and you've engaged them emotionally. Well, when we talk about logic, we talk about comparables. We talk about, peer pressure. We talk about social proof, all of those things. Now, one element that Aristotle didn't have in his model, because I don't think he had a sales quota. We added this little tidbit, which is facilitate action. And that's the one that fascinates me.
Yep.
What are some things you can do to get people to conform or to do what you want them to do? And I just want to give you a quick example. We talk about persuasion as opposed to persuasion, persuasion or priming. And that's something as simple as we did some experiments. We had some people go out to the street and ask the question, would you mind taking a survey? 29% of the people said, yeah, I'll take a survey. Well, that's not bad. Those are nice folks. But we wanted to do better. So we changed the question to, do you consider yourself a helpful person? Well, sure I do. Would you mind helping me with a survey? The numbers went up to 77.9%.
I bet. Yeah.
Just with that element of persuasion.
Put the pressure back on
So,
me.
it's interesting how many things are influencing our decisions every day that we're not always aware of. Persuade is an attempt to put those tools in everybody's hand so that they're all aware of them and ready to use them when it's time to. Now, here's another thing. What's the difference between persuade and manipulate? There's not a lot,
right,
except intent.
Yes.
So in our book, we talk, the first chapter is about, look, you can use, basically the message is you can use these tools for good or evil, hopefully for good.
And it's interesting how you talk about how important the language is and the persuasion and the persuasion and that. We hear it all the time in the mortgage and the real estate business. What's your rate? What's your rate? Is it a negotiation? Maybe it's a negotiation. It's definitely a persuasion. That they're peanut butter and jelly, right?
Yeah.
They're going to go together. Hey, this is
Sure.
the listing price on the house. I'm in the process of doing what? I'm in the process. We just bought a house last week. We're trying to sell our house. That happens next week. Is it all about the dollar that's coming in? That's a piece of it, but we find out all that other stuff. Okay, what's your timeline? When do you need to have this happen? What about the inspection? How about repairs? There's all this other stuff that happens. So I think there's a quick concept or a quick mindset that happens in a lot of people's brains. Of it's almost like the Heisman. This isn't a negotiation. What's your rate? We're not going back and forth. I don't want a relationship, but it is more than that, than just simply the number. Because if that's what it was, that's just going to the grocery store and saying, okay, I'll just go buy a bag of Oreos and you're done.
Yeah,
Sure.
But it's even more than Oreos, because now which grocery store did you go to and why'd you do the Oreos, not the Chips Ahoy, right? So there's the persuasion, because they have, where's it going to be on the shelf? How high, how low? Is it on the end of the aisle? Whatever. And that's why I wanted to bring Mr. Cochran in here today, because he deals with this stuff every day of his life, and we have talked about it. So that being said, I'm going to throw it back over to Bryan and John just for a little bit to try and pick Jeff's brain, because there's a lot to get at right there. So I'm going to back off for a second and say, okay, we're in the negotiation persuasion realm. We're in the mortgage and real estate markets. Where do we want to go with it, fellas?
Yeah, I think, Steve, you kind of started down that road, and, being that you're going through the process of selling your house and buying a house. And I think the first question is like, is buying a house really a negotiation?
John, what do you think before you throw it over to Jeff? Because if you say no, it's going to be a really short podcast.
Of course, it's going to be a negotiation. I mean, you want to get the best price that you can get on the new house. But so I mean, you're going to build. You're going to go off the trust that the realtor partner, hopefully, that you're working with, and what they value that property to be worth, and then make a decision. Together.
But in today's market right now, we're seeing homes sell for record prices over ask. Right? There's no negotiation in there. Right now, the person in most cases in this market who's winning is winning because they offered the most.
Au contraire, mon frère.
We'll talk to
what's going to happen is I'll throw it back over to Jeff, because as I said, I did this with him. Jeff, go through the 3 P's, because he already said one of the P's is sitting right there, right? It's got to be what the price is and how we find that. So is preparation important when you're walking to buying a home?
Yeah, preparation is critical. I mean, you have to go in. We talk about the preparation, and our acronym for preparation is PAID: precedents, alternatives, interests, and deadlines. Well, you look at precedents in your industry is, what precedents are there? Precedents are, comparables. Precedents are right now the market's red hot if you're a seller. So we've looked at all those precedents. Alternatives. Buying a home is a very emotional decision.
Very much.
So, somebody walks in and says, oh my God, this is the home for me. Well, great. Let me tell you what it's going to take to make sure you get it. You're not paying $20,000 over ask because you think it's worth it. You're paying the $20,000 as a premium to guarantee that you get it. Yep. So if you look at that as a guarantee of certainty to close, maybe $20,000 is a good number, maybe it isn't. What's your interest? What is it about this house that makes you so excited? Could you potentially get another house and remodel it? So what's the real interest? And then, of course, what's the deadline? Tick, 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 tick. Nobody knows the deadline, because you know what? I don't know if there's somebody down at the end of the driveway who's going to drive in and give a higher offer even than mine. Yeah. So we don't know what the deadline is. The deadline's very fluid. But I think it's interesting. The people who say, look, I don't want to negotiate, or this is not a negotiation. Sure it is. It's just a really short one. We've skipped steps 1 and 2, which is preparation and probing. Why do you want it? What do you find attractive about it? And we've jumped immediately to the proposal. And we throw a number out there and hope it sticks.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we try to do with a process is make it a little more systematic than it is just what a lot of folks do now. It's a very emotional decision everywhere. Even the mortgage folks are, there's a cowboy element. You got a lot of people in this going, hey, this is a crazy market. My strategy is, take it down to the bone, but do as many deals as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the mortgage king of Eastern Louisiana.
Yeah.
Well, how much did you make? Not a lot.
Yep.
But I moved, I gave a lot of mortgages.
Yep. Gave it away.
So Jeff, I like when you said, a guarantee to close. Just because I went through this I'm in the process of going through this process. It didn't just look at, hey, what's the offer to buy your house? It was, is this person a cash buyer? How much money are they putting down? What are the interests? Are they want to make repairs? Because, even though that's the dollar sign at the end, right now, I'm going to be paying more money because if I have to make more repairs, that's going to be money coming out of my pocket. I had one person come in. It's really neat. I don't know if you all know this, but we had reviews. So anybody that comes in, they get to type in like, hi, I have an appointment at this time. And then they can list a review of what they thought of the house.
Okay.
And this one person types in, loved it, beautiful, great kitchen, well-maintained. Are you interested in buying the house? No. Didn't like the backyard, right? They love the house. They didn't like the backyard. So we always say it's all about that money. It's not just about that money. No. And that's where I think the probing, you got to hear what these interests are of these people to what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I think, too, to your
You've got to ask.
Yeah. I think, to you, the point before that, too, we were talking about the preparation. I think here's a win or a takeaway if you're a real estate agent watching this right now is that preparation piece. If you're listing a home for sale, having a home that is more marketable than another is certainly very important, right? And so, like Steve, you just shared with us some of the feedback you got on the home that you listed for sale is that was well maintained, right? I think that there is a certain seller in the market right now who's just like, hey, everything's going for top dollar. I'm listing as is, right? But again,
20% overvalue.
You could list a home on the same street that's better maintained. That when in a frenzy of the market where people are offering over ask, that home that's better prepared for sale is going to go under contract first. And possibly if I'm trying to decide between similar houses, I'll ask more over ask for this one than I will for this one over here.
Goes back to Jeff. What did he say? There's 4 steps to persuasion, right? What's the first one? You got to get credibility. You walk in a house, somebody took care of the house. You go, okay, I'm not going to have huge problems later on in life. You say, oh my gosh, they treated this house like a tent, right? An old Jimmy Buffett song. I treat my body like a temple. You treat yours like a tent. You see somebody that didn't take care of their house at all. What are you going to say? Well, I'm sure something else is going to break in it tomorrow. Why would I want to go do that? And it is emotional, right? I mean, that's our second one. You got to engage them on that emotion. Am I right on that, Jeff? Or where are we coming out? I want to get this about you.
Absolutely. You build your own personal credibility, the appearance of the house, the first thing, the curb appeal. Mm-hmm. People decide whether you're a good owner or a bad owner, and they make their decision partially on that. The emotional. The backyard. Sometimes we can't, we can't make the backyard bigger. But there are some things we can do to increase the appeal if we know it's the backyard. But also the logic. I've seen in our area, there's a lot of pieces of property that are up for sale. And, logically, look, this is a relatively, small lot. The lot next door is also available. So let me appeal to the logic, which is you can always buy more, if it's available. And then, of course, to facilitate action, as we go through this, I don't think any real estate agent's going to be surprised by this, but start to get the positive responses. Hey, what do you think of that kitchen? Oh, I love it. Well, what do you think of the downstairs? Love it. How about this entryway? Oh, I love it. Get the small yeses so that potentially, look, the backyard, I don't love it, but I love everything else, and it overcomes the backyard.
Yeah, checks 9 out of 10
it's a
boxes.
trade-off.
Yep. Well, I mean, I think in normal times, a lot of these points are great, but in today's market, I think that it's so unique that I mean, it seems like in our state here in Florida, where Bryan and I are located, I mean, as quickly as you're putting a home for sale, there's multiple offers on that property, well over asking, regardless of condition. So it's just, you almost have to act. The emotion is to you've got to buy something in many cases that you might not love. And my question is, if you're a buyer's agent working with those people and you know what checks their boxes, I think you still have to remind yourself that you've got to also persuade the buyer that this house might not meet the criteria. They're getting a little, we're seeing people get desperate.
Well, I think not just that, but you're also seeing them get fatigued. Like, hey, I've made offers on 9 homes. I've been rejected on 9 homes. I've been looking for houses for weeks. Hey, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, maybe this just isn't the right time for me. So I'm thinking from the perspective of, how do I persuade that buyer to stay in the game? We're going to find something.
Sure.
You know,
and I think a lot of times it's one of the things we talk about is walk through the details. Look, you know, on the greater scheme of things, what's the average amount of time somebody owns a home? You know, it's measured in years. And yet people are sitting there talking about measuring, you know, how long it's taken them to find a home. And they're talking in weeks. I've put in 9 offers and they've all been rejected. Maybe I'm going to drop out. Well, now wait a second. You know, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And I mean, I know that might scare you a little bit, but I mean, you know, if you're going to invest, do you think it's too much to invest another 9 weeks? Let's say it takes double where we are right now. Is 9 weeks too much to invest to find a home that you may raise your children in and live in for 10 years? I mean, and again, so it's appealing to that emotion. Because we've already established the credibility. Let's put some emotion into it, and some logic. Do the math. Look, you were rejected 9 times because you know what? Right now, the market's unreasonable. It's crazy. But even within those...
It potentially is freezing out some first-time home buyers that have little to no down payment, that aren't in the position, you know, if they're looking at homes, maybe starter homes that are 300, let's just use a number, and offers are coming in typically at 340 and 360 where they don't have the funds when the appraisal comes back at 310 to make that deal work. So for those, there's a big segment that's, you know, they potentially would have to put pause on until we see some inventory free up a little bit. You know, in specific states, namely here in Florida. You know, how do you work with buyers like that, and how do you counsel them? You know, when you continue to lose out potentially on a low down payment, you know, type of borrower that has great credit and you know, in a normal market would be able to get an offer accepted.
Some of it is your credibility as somebody who's been in the industry for how long. You know that the market's going to turn.
Correct.
So, you know, in some cases, look, we talk about credibility is built. One of the quickest ways to build credibility are statements against self-interest. Well, you know, the realtor's self-interest is to do a deal, any deal.
Right.
You know, but they build their credibility by sharing things that, look, maybe now isn't the best time for you as a first-time buyer. I tell you what, let's develop a strategy where I'm going to keep looking for you, but, you know, you're going to kind of back off a little bit. I'm only going to call you if I think we can win. I'm not going to advise you to jump into the market and come in too high. I'm going to ask you to, look, time out. Let's take a little time out and regroup and see if we can't wait out the market.
Yep. Hey, Jeff, one of the things that I see on just kind of the notes we put together here was, you know, you talk about demonstrating logic. And, you know, one of the things I think to maybe answer your question here a little bit, John, is in our business, there's a cost of waiting to buy as well, right? And so the factors that go into that is, hey, is appreciation going to continue to go up?
Rental properties, landlords are going to increase rents by 10% nationally over the next 12 months. Home values are supposed to increase 6% nationally over the next 12 months. So do you want to jump in and continue to rent and have that potentially escalate, or is it now the time to really dig in and buy a home?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, those are all things that you have to help them make a logical decision on by sharing some facts. To Jeff's point, having some credibility. So, if appreciation is going to continue to go up, that means you're going to pay more for the home the longer that you wait, which also means your down payment is going to be higher the longer that you wait, which also means now your monthly payment is going to be higher the longer you wait, which now also means you lost out on appreciation. Most people, their largest asset is their home.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So the longer they wait to buy a home, they're losing out on any number of things. Plus, the other thing we don't know and we can't control is what's going to happen with interest rates, right? Interest rates could go up, they could go down. Now, one of the reasons that home affordability is still at an all-time low is because of interest rates, right? Prices are going up pretty quickly, but interest rates have stayed down, and that's why homeowners are still able to afford homes. So I think, Jeff, in the point of demonstrate logic, I think is that like an accurate representation of the things that you want to talk to somebody about who may be getting that fatigue?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to make sure that they understand the numbers. Again, because people make decisions emotionally. Well, but sometimes giving them the numbers strips out the emotion, or it guides their emotion.
Sure.
Everybody loves to get a deal. As soon as you said that rents are going up by 10%, but homeowners, home values are going up by 6%, all of a sudden I'm looking at the market going, well, I'm the smartest guy in the room if I run out and buy a house right now.
Correct.
Or buy a house that has rental property attached to it. Because, and so I have the emotional. Look, one of the emotions we tap into, to quote old Charlie Sheen, winning. People love to win.
You got some tiger blood, Jeff?
Yeah, get that tiger blood in there and start winning. Well, some of the numbers you were throwing around makes me feel like a winner.
Or to make you feel like a loser, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you flip it just for 1 second. Well, I want to talk about rate. Well, hold on a second. Do you really you want to negotiate the rate? You got to get in the house before you're going to worry about the rate.
Mm-hmm.
If you look on a $200,000 loan amount, an eighth of a point is a whopping $3 a week.
Cup of coffee.
So if you're saying I'm not going to do this because of an eighth of a point, what are you negotiating? But
I love it.
If you raise your bid to $2,000 and you're able to get that house, how much does that add to your payment? Virtually nothing. So, I mean, we all talk about this rate and this number, but you're talking rate, I'm talking payment. And all of a sudden now it's logical because this is what's best for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the message right now is if you're a home buyer, you want to be persistent and buy a home. And one of the reasons why it's so difficult, the low inventory. I mean, we know we have just over 1 million homes for sale in the United States. In 2007, at our peak, we had 3.5 million homes for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, we have 13 million more households, so it's a supply and demand problem, and that's not going to stop in the next 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, except I was broke in 2007.
We don't want to go back to that for sure. But it's just low inventory. I mean, so the home prices are going to hold stable, and people that are out there thinking this might be a bubble.
Yep.
A lot of talk about 2006 and 2007. Are we at that point? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
But we could talk. That's back to the credibility and the logic. Are we at that point? And I can tell you why I don't think we are. But what I think that we haven't talked about enough yet today is interest, because we keep looking at how much. Jeff, tell us a little bit about asking the good questions, waiting for the right answer, listening to those keywords. I was sharing with Bryan the other day when we were talking about the old egg scenario that we used to do as a simulation that was out there. If you recall, I'm sure you recall that one. I don't know if you still do it. But give us a little bit about identifying interests and how it may or may not just be about money. Can I ask you for that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, people, again, we were talking about your situation, Steve. You own a house, you're buying a house. One of the quick questions you need to ask someone in that position is, what's your risk tolerance? Because owning two houses, are you okay if you have two mortgages for a little while? Are you willing to hold out, or are you very risk averse where, you know what? No, I have to sell the first house before I buy the second house. So we talk about interests. What are you really trying to achieve? What are you really trying to get done? I always think about a guy who walks into a hardware store and asks for a 1/4-inch drill bit. What does he want? Well, he wants 1/4-inch holes, and he figured out how to get them is the best way is a 1/4-inch drill bit. But I guarantee if you had a box of holes back behind the counter, he'd buy them because that's all he really wants.
He wants it done.
That's all he really wants is a bunch of holes. So look, or maybe you don't have holes to sell him, but maybe he wants 1/4-inch holes in a piece of balsa wood, and you can sell him a hole punch that'll give him the exact same thing. So the guy wants holes, he doesn't want drill bits. Nobody gets home and goes, "Hey, look at this drill bit." Nobody's showing that off. Yeah. They have it because it's a tool to get what they want. Well, the interesting thing is money is a lot like that drill bit. What are you going to do with it? Look, I want all the money in the world so that, I can, build a fence and get some privacy. Okay, well, what if we found you a property that had privacy already? You don't need the money to build the fence. You pay a little bit more for a property that has privacy. Yeah. So can we ask those key questions to find out what is it that they really want? I know what they say they want. I want a lower rate. I want to shave a couple of points off my, couple of basis points off my mortgage. And I love what Steve turns it around and says, yeah, $3 a month. Is that worth missing out on? Because I'm sitting there going, yeah, I know the thing to do is to get the lowest number. Well, maybe we change it. Would it be worth $3 a month to get the property? I think interests are the key. What are you really after, and how do I help you get there?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, Jeff. And like on the interest rate conversation, I think, we went through this period last year in 2020 where we refinanced people like it was at a rapid clip. It was so much of a frenzy. I think people were refinancing because there was FOMO. Well, my neighbor got this rate, and my neighbor got that rate, and my neighbor got this rate over here. And at the end of the day, maybe, Jeff, to your point, the lowest interest rate wasn't what really mattered to them most, right? And we don't oftentimes ask enough questions to be able to show them everything that is available, right? So like as an example on our business, if you want to do a cash out refinance, that interest rate is always going to be higher than just a rate and term refinance. But if you had FOMO from all of your neighbors refinancing and they got this and this person got that and this person got this, and you came to the LO and said, hey, I want to refinance I heard my neighbor got 3 1/4. Okay, I can do that for you. Right. But what you didn't really ask was
what's the reason?
What's the reason? And what else is going on in your life where I might be able to say to somebody, hey, why don't we get rid of some of this 22% interest credit card debt? We do a cash out refinance. We get you out of that. At the end of the day, if the rate was a little bit higher, but instead of saving you $100 a month on your mortgage, I saved you $90 a month on your mortgage and $500 a month on your credit card payments, is that of interest to you? And a lot of times we don't get to that.
Sure. One of the things, look, being an expert in your field, you just assume everybody knows what you know.
That's true.
So, you look at it and you go, well, of course, everybody knows that, that much movement on a mortgage is 3% a month. Yeah, well, most people don't because you're the expert. And that can be a challenge sometimes. We don't ask enough questions because there's two ways it could go. We sound like a know-it-all. Let me tell you. Or, we don't ask questions because we don't want to look like we don't know. or we don't want to ask a question that we don't know the answer to. You know, Steve's an attorney. He knows you don't ask if you don't know the answer, or pretty sure where it's going to go.
Or maybe you don't want to know the answer.
Or don't want to know. That's the scary
Why
part.
is that trunk so big?
Yeah.
I throw it right back as somebody who's going through the process right now. I mean, I know Jeff. Jeff grew up on a farm. Jeff is a handy guy. I know Matt. I mean, look at me. I can't hang a picture, right? So I've been in this house for 19 years. You know what was really important to me? Somebody who wasn't going to make me do repairs, because any repair that was going to have to be done on my house, I'm going to have to pay for a contractor to do.
Yeah.
I can't do it on myself. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm willing to, it's a 20-year-old house, I'm willing to come in a little bit less, but no repairs versus the opposite, guess what?
Sure.
I'm going to go with a little bit less with the no repairs, because that's going to end up costing me.
Yeah.
So depending on, or the opposite. When Jeff's coming in, he goes, I can make repairs. I look at that deck out there. That'll be a Saturday afternoon and a
Piece
good
of
time.
cake,
We'll have
yep.
some buddies over and we're good. So we have to look at those true interests that are out there.
Yeah, good point.
Jeff, we got to get together sometime soon. It was a pleasure having you on here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
Thank you for having me.
Hey,
I really
Jeff.
thanks for being
appreciate
here.
it.
I tell you what, you're like, I can tell, even though I've only met you through Zoom, that you're one of those guys I could sit down and probably talk with all night long. Probably
Thank
tons
you.
of great stories and very interesting, and we certainly appreciate you.
Thanks for
joining
joining us,
adding
yeah.
some massive value to us and joining us today. So
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'll come back anytime
So,
you like.
Jeff, we'll make sure that we let people know how to get a copy of that book that you got coming out.
Sure.
And I would like to pick up a copy as well. There you go, Persuade. Is it already available
It
for
is.
sale?
Yep.
It is available on Amazon.
Boom.
You can
I've got it.
You already
Google
bought it, didn't you?
Persuade Jeff Cochran, and this book will pop up. It's a value at twice the price. I don't know.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So everybody watching, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Contacts to Contracts podcast. On behalf of Jeff, Steve, John, I am Brian. If there's anything
guys.
that you need, please know we're always here to serve.